This story today is so powerful, it reshapes destiny, set against howling winds and endless white plains. It's a place where love, fear, and survival collide at the edge of the frontier. It all begins with a single wrong step into a blizzard. Something small, yet enough to change every vow ever made at Ashen Vows. Before we kick off this adventure, don't forget to hit like on the video and let us know in the comments where you're watching from. A hard wind screamed across the Dakota plains, flinging shards of ice that cut at Lena Marrow's face like blades. She had never imagined that this frozen expanse would be her true initiation into the West. Wrapped in a worn cloak, barely holding together, she pressed a small locket to her chest, the last fragile link to the life she had left behind in the East. Then came the pounding of hooves, sudden and close, swallowed almost instantly by the white roar of the storm. Out of the swirling snow stepped a solitary Apache warrior, his tall form half lost in the gale. In that breathless instant, a path neither of them had ever foreseen began to take shape. Survival, Lena would later learn, often demands trust in strangers, and in the fierce instinct that refuses to surrender. She had never thought her entire existence could be reduced to what fit inside a single trunk. Born in Philadelphia to a humble family, she was raised on discipline, effort, and the quiet belief that endurance could carry a person forward. Her father, Abel Marrow, had sacrificed endlessly to see her educated, teaching her to read and write in a world that rarely bothered to teach women either. When the financial panic of 1873 destroyed his modest shipping business, everything unraveled. His health failed soon after, and desperation crept into the household, tightening its grip with every passing month. Lena's future arrived folded inside a newspaper advertisement from the Philadelphia Daily Ledger. A man named Ridge Halston, living near Bismarck in the Dakota Territory, sought a respectable woman to become his wife and partner on frontier land. The notice promised hardship, honesty, and opportunity in equal measure. Lena hesitated for days before finally answering the ad with a careful, guarded letter. She was not foolish enough to romanticize such arrangements. Still, Ridge's replies were steady and sincere. He wrote of a small ranch near the Missouri River, of long days, open land, and plans to build something lasting with a capable woman by his side. His handwriting was plain, his words measured. Over time, despite her caution, a quiet hope took root in Lena's chest, growing stronger with each letter that arrived. Her father's death removed any reason to delay. With her mother's blessing, Lena boarded a westbound train carrying 2 dresses, her mother's Bible, a handful of keepsakes, and the resolve she clung to like armor. Beyond Bismarck, she knew no one. All she possessed was an address, a name, and the assurance that Ridge Halston would be waiting at the station to escort her to his ranch, where they would marry when spring came. Or so she believed. The train shrieked and sighed as it pulled into Bismarck, snow swirling the moment Lena stepped onto the platform, stinging her cheeks raw. She had arrived in the grip of one of the harshest winters anyone could remember. Talk buzzed through the station of an approaching storm, and travelers were urged to move on quickly or find shelter. Lena's unease sharpened. She noticed a man holding a small sign with her name, but he turned out to be Bram Hensley, a local driver hired by Ridge to take her to the ranch nearly 20 miles outside town. Ridge had been delayed, Bram explained. A sudden freeze had damaged part of the stable roof, demanding urgent repairs. Disappointment flickered through her. But Lena accepted the explanation. She had come too far to question fate now. There was no turning back. The next morning, Lena climbed into a wooden coach beside Bram Hensley, the wagon stacked with supplies for the ranch. wheels lurched over frozen ruts as the town of Bismarck faded behind them, replaced by endless, wind-scoured plains. Bram tipped his hat and spoke over the creak of the harness. "Name's Bram," he said. "I'll get you to Halston's place as fast as I can, ma'am, but folks are saying a storm's rolling in. If it catches us, we may have to hole up at a trading post till it blows through." Lena said nothing, simply lowering her gaze and clasping her hands in her lap. Unease settled deep in her gut. She had expected hardship in the west, but the dark mass of clouds building along the horizon stirred something close to dread. Before long, the cold sharpened. The wind rose into a shrill howl that tore at Lena's ears, and snow began to fall in thick, blinding curtains. Visibility vanished until Bram Hensley could barely make out the shallow ruts beneath the wheels. The horses grew restless, snorting and sidestepping as the drifts climbed higher with every mile. Near dusk, a sudden blast of frozen wind struck the coach broadside, rolling the wooden frame into a bank of snow. Lena and Bram slammed hard against the interior, the breath knocked clean from their lungs. Dazed, Lena tried to push herself upright, but her legs buckled. She heard Bram shouting, "Whoa, whoa!" as the terrified horses surged forward. Leathers snapped. One horse broke free, harness tearing loose as it vanished into the white void. The other stumbled and collapsed, half buried in snow. Bram clawed his way out of the overturned coach, swearing under his breath. Lena crawled after him and staggered straight into the storm. The wind lashed her cloak and burned her eyes until she could barely see an arm's length ahead. Bram dragged her toward the remaining horse. "We've lost one," he yelled over the gale. "If we don't find shelter, we won't last the night." He tore through the wreckage, grabbing blankets and whatever supplies he could reach. Together they pushed on, half leading, half hauling the exhausted animal through the drifts. All around them stretched nothing but white. No trading post, no ranch, no sign of another soul. The cold gnawed through Lena's boots, stealing the feeling from her toes. Each breath came shallow and ragged. Then the horse spooked. Lena saw Bram's grip slip. The animal screamed and bolted, disappearing into the swirling snow. Bram ran after it, leaving Lena alone beside the broken coach and scattered crates. Panic coiled tight in her chest. "Bram?" she cried, stumbling forward. Snow clung to her lashes, and the wind swallowed her voice whole. Time stretched unbearably. Her limbs grew heavy, her strength draining away. She tried to follow the faint tracks Bram and the horse had left behind, but the falling snow erased them almost instantly. Desperate, she turned back, searching for any sign of life. There was only the wrecked coach, nearly buried beneath a rising mound of snow. With no other choice, Lena returned to it. The cold deepened. She fumbled for a loose blanket, a lantern, anything that might hold back the killing chill. Her gloved hands trembled violently, sensation fading from her fingers. She was utterly alone. The storm closed in so tightly, it felt like a grave. Her thoughts drifted to her mother's face, to the letters from Ridge Halston that had carried her this far, and to the grim certainty that no one could reach her in a storm like this. Tears froze at the corners of her eyes as her vision dimmed. Then, faint but unmistakable, came the crunch of footsteps. At first it sounded unreal, like a trick of the wind. Through half-lidded eyes, Lena made out a tall figure wrapped in furs, dark hair braided beneath a hood rimmed with frost. The man dropped to one knee beside her. She tried to speak, but only a broken whisper escaped her lips. He lifted her carefully into his arms, deep, steady eyes fixed on her with unmistakable concern. Without a word, he lifted her and drew her close, wrapping a heavy buffalo robe around her shoulders until the cold could no longer reach her skin. Lena Marrow slipped in and out of consciousness. But one certainty held fast in her fading thoughts. She had been found. Whether by fate or sheer chance, she was no longer alone. When Lena woke again, the sharp sting of cold had been replaced by the scent of burning sage and the low, steady rhythm of a drum. Warmth surrounded her, sinking deep into her bones. Slowly, awareness returned. She lay inside a large teepee, its canvas walls shifting softly with the wind. Her frozen clothes were gone, replaced by layers of thick blankets. A jolt of alarm ran through her, but exhaustion pinned her in place. Every muscle screamed with pain. Heat pulsed behind her eyes, feverish and relentless. She tried to speak, but her throat burned, dry and useless. A young Apache woman appeared beside her, holding out a wooden bowl filled with steaming broth. Lena flinched at first, instinct tightening her chest, but thirst and hunger won out. She took the bowl and drank carefully, warmth spreading with every swallow. The woman answered with a gentle smile. Moments later, the flap of the teepee lifted, and the man from the storm stepped inside, brushing snow from his buffalo robe. He paused when their eyes met, then moved closer. The woman spoke quietly in Apache, words Lena could not understand. The man nodded and crouched beside her, extending one open hand, empty and unthreatening. In slow, careful English, he said, "I am Nakai. You are safe." Tears stung Lena's eyes as she nodded. She tried to answer, but the questions crowded her mind too quickly. Where am I? Where is Bram Hensley? How long have I been here? Emotion tightened her chest, stealing her voice. All she managed was a faint, "Thank you." Nakai spoke again, choosing his words with care. "Storm strong. Found you under snow. Horse tracks. No man." His gaze searched her face, waiting as if hoping she could explain how she had been left alone in a storm meant to kill. Lena could only shake her head, shivering violently. Fatigue dragged her back under, and she sank into the fur-lined bedding as the distant drumbeat echoed somewhere beyond the teepee walls. Over the next days, she drifted through fevered dreams. Each time she surfaced, a different face hovered nearby. Women with steady hands and quiet kindness. Men watching with open curiosity from the entrance. They brought her water, food, and bitter herbal remedies meant to ease her lungs and warm her blood. Through the haze, she learned a few names. Ayla, Nakai's mother. Saya, an elderly healer who brewed sharp teas and sang low, melodic songs while she worked. Little by little, Lena understood where she was. This was the winter camp of the Red Mesa Apache. Their teepees set near a flowing creek for water. Snow-covered hills formed a rough circle around the valley, shielding it from the worst of the wind. Several families shared the camp, including Nakai's. He was known among them as a skilled tracker and a man of few words, respected for his calm strength. Yet despite the warmth of their fires and the care she received, Lena felt a quiet ache of dislocation, as though she stood between two worlds. Communication came slowly. She caught only fragments of English, a few familiar words here and there. Sometimes she heard talk of growing tensions with the Territory Dragoons, of patrols near the settlements around Bismarck, and of the danger that followed them like a shadow. Even as her strength returned, Lena sensed the weight of history pressing in on this hidden valley, and knew that nothing about her survival had been simple chance. Lena remembered reading about Colonel Nelson A. Miles in Eastern newspapers. Now the truth settled hard in her chest. The conflict between the tribes and the U.S. government was no distant headline. It was real, sharp-edged, and dangerous. She had stepped into a fragile moment in history, unsure where her next choice would lead. One evening, as strength slowly returned to her limbs, Lena stepped outside the teepee for the first time. The cold air bit deep into her lungs, and she pulled a buffalo robe tighter around her shoulders. The camp stirred with life. Children ran laughing through the snow. Women tended low fires, coaxing warmth from embers. Men repaired tools and readied gear for the hunt. The bond among them was unmistakable. Lena felt like an outsider, and yet strangely steadied by it all. Nakai noticed her and motioned toward the fire, inviting her to sit. Lowering herself beside him, she said softly, "Thank you for everything. You saved my life." Nakai's brow creased as he searched for the right words. Welcome, he said. "You stay. Heal." She nodded. I must find someone." She tried again, the words catching. "Bram Hensley and Ridge Halston. Do they even know I'm alive?" He tilted his head, listening carefully. When she touched her hand where a wedding band would have been, understanding dawned. "Bismarck," he said at last. Then, pointing south, he added slowly, "When storm ends, I help you." They sat without speaking after that, watching the flames sway and crackle between them. Lena wondered how a single turn of fate had placed her life in this man's hands. A stranger from a world she barely understood. Yet all she felt was gratitude and a growing respect for Nakai's quiet strength and unspoken generosity. Over the next week, the blizzard raged without mercy. Snow piled high enough to swallow trails and landmarks alike, making travel impossible. Lena clung to hope that Bram had survived, that he had reached shelter or been found. But with each passing day, that hope thinned. Her thoughts returned again and again to Ridge Halston, the man she had crossed half a continent to marry. Had he stopped waiting for her? She had no way of knowing. In the camp of the Red Mesa Apache, life centered on shared labor and survival. Lena began to help where she could, carrying water from the creek, shaking out heavy blankets, helping portion dried meat. Language remained a barrier, but smiles, gestures, and patience bridged what words could not. Slowly, she learned a few simple phrases, enough to greet others and offer thanks. Each small success made her feel less invisible. She soon realized how deeply the people respected Talon, Nakai's father, a man who had once fought alongside renowned leaders and now carried quiet grief for all that had been taken from his people. In his eyes lived a sorrow shaped by loss of land, freedom, and certainty. At times, Lena overheard talk of moving again once the snow eased. The men spoke cautiously of patrols from the territory dragoons. The women worried over dwindling buffalo herds, thinned by relentless hunting from traders and soldiers alike. Every whispered concern reminded Lena that she stood at the edge of a struggle far larger than herself, one that would soon demand a choice she could not avoid. Every new detail unsettled what Lena thought she understood about the West. One bitter afternoon, she sat near the creek, letting the weak winter sun touch her face. Nakai approached quietly, holding something small in his hands. He offered it to her. It was a rough carving of a hawk in flight, its wings shaped with care, the edges worn smooth by patient work. Lena studied it, puzzled. Nakai tapped his chest and spoke slowly. "My name means eagle." He paused, then added with a faint shrug, "But I like hawk too." The simple honesty of the gift stirred her. She smiled and pressed her hand to her heart. "Lena," she said. He repeated it carefully. "Le na mar rao," testing the sounds until they settled between them. Their eyes held for a moment longer than necessary. A quiet warmth passed between them, unexpected and unsettling. Lena looked away, color rising in her cheeks. She reminded herself that she was promised to a man she had yet to meet face to face. A man who, she had to believe, was still waiting for her beyond the endless snow. Days blurred into weeks. At last, the storm loosened its grip. The sky cleared to a sharp, brilliant blue. Hunters from the Red Mesa Apache tested the trails and found that while the drifts remained deep, travel might soon be possible. Lena's heart fluttered. Soon, she could reach Bismarck and Ridge Halston. Gratitude filled her for the people who had saved her life. Yet a growing unease crept in at the thought of leaving them. They had become something like family, especially Nakai. Still, she clung to resolve. Promises waited for her back east. Her future, she told herself, lay in keeping them. That resolve faltered one afternoon when Nakai returned to camp sooner than expected, worry etched across his face. He, Talon, and 2 other men had spotted a patrol of the Territory Dragoons in the distance. They had gone unseen, but soldiers so near meant danger. The people of the camp understood what discovery could bring: forced removal, confinement, or worse. Lena felt the threat keenly. She might have been an outsider, but she had no wish to be rescued by soldiers who would treat her saviors as criminals. Memories of broken treaties and bloody clashes she had read about flooded her mind. Nakai and Talon spoke with the elders late into the evening. By nightfall, the decision was made. The camp would move at first light, before the soldiers could trace them. Fear tightened in Lena's chest. Where would they go? And how would she ever reach Bismarck now? Later that night, Nakai found her standing outside her teepee, gazing up at a sky thick with stars. In slow, careful English, he said, "We leave soon. If you want Bismarck, I take you, alone. Others go another way." She hesitated, understanding the weight of his offer and the danger it carried. "It could be risky," she said quietly. He nodded once. "Yes, but I keep you safe." The certainty in his voice struck her hard. She remembered his arms lifting her from the snow, the warmth his people had given without question. For a heartbeat, she doubted everything she thought she wanted. Then the image of Ridge Halston and the promise she had made her mother rose between them. "Yes," she said at last, her voice unsteady. "Thank you." Before dawn, the camp stirred in tense silence, every movement urgent, as the people of the Red Mesa Apache prepared to vanish once more into the vast, unforgiving land. Lena's possessions amounted to almost nothing. Only the clothes she wore, her cloak, and a small bundle. The Apache women helped her prepare what little she would carry: dried meat, a canteen, and a spare blanket. She said her farewells to Ayla and Saya, who pressed a small pouch of healing herbs into her hands. Lena could not find words strong enough for her gratitude, so she embraced them instead, tears spilling freely. Talon placed his hand on Nakai's shoulder and spoke quietly in Apache. Lena did not understand the words, but she sensed a blessing, or a farewell. In the elder's hard eyes, she caught a flash of concern for his son. While the rest of the Red Mesa Apache prepared to move west, Lena and Nakai turned their horses east, toward Bismarck. They were fortunate to have 2 sturdy mounts. No small mercy in such country. As they rode, Lena felt both relief and a sharp ache of loss. The wind carried away the last traces of smoke from the only refuge she had known in this land. For hours they traveled in near silence. Sunlight flashed off the snow so brightly that Lena had to squint, tears streaming from her eyes. The land was brutal and breathtaking all at once. She felt Nakai's presence behind her. Steady, alert. He read the land with ease, noticing every shift of wind and every faint mark in the snow. Lena realized how differently he saw the world, as if the ground itself spoke to him in a language she could barely grasp. By midday, they stopped beside a frozen stream to rest the horses and eat. The cold still clung to Lena's bones, her body slow to recover from all it had endured. Nakai handed her dried meat and a piece of fry bread he had saved. "How far?" she asked, her teeth chattering. 2 days, he answered. "If trail good. We go slow." She nodded, wrapping her arms around herself for warmth. Deep inside, she dreaded the goodbye she knew awaited her. The parting from a man whose kindness had already saved her more than once. They rode on until dusk. As they rounded a bend between two hills crusted with ice, Lena spotted a faint orange glow ahead. Smoke drifted upward. "A cabin," she murmured, relief flaring. Perhaps they could shelter there for the night. Nakai slowed them, insisting they approach carefully. They dismounted and led the horses by the reins. As they drew closer, Lena made out the battered shape of a small cabin, its porch half collapsed and leaning against the wind. A single horse stood in a rough corral out front. Near the door, a broken sign hung crookedly. "Harris's Trading Post." Aside from the smoke curling from the chimney, the place looked abandoned. When they reached the door, it flew open. A gaunt man in a tattered coat stepped out, rifle raised. "Who's there?" Lena's heart hammered. She lifted one hand. "We mean no harm. We're only looking for shelter." The man's eyes slid from her to Nakai, narrowing with open suspicion. "What's that Indian doing with you, miss?" She stiffened at the edge in his voice and straightened her shoulders. "He's my friend. He saved my life." The rifle lowered a fraction as the man studied her worn clothes and Nakai's calm stance. "Name's Clyde Rourke," he said. "My father owned this place. He's gone now. I'm just riding out the winter here." He let out a bitter breath. "Storm took near everything I had." Clyde Rourke let out a dry, humorless laugh. "Got a little whiskey left," he said, "if that counts for anything." Lena glanced at Nakai, who stood tense, his eyes never leaving the man. She turned back to Clyde. "May we stay the night? We have dried meat. We can share." Clyde hesitated, suspicion battling desperation in his eyes. At last, he stepped aside. "You can come in," he said, "but I'm keeping the rifle close. I don't trust Indians." A flash of anger rose in Lena, but she swallowed it. They weren't in a position to argue. The cabin was a single, cramped room, a stone fireplace, a scarred table, 2 chairs, and a narrow bed pushed into one corner. The air reeked of smoke, damp earth, and old sweat. A lantern flickered, throwing uneasy shadows across the walls. Nakai studied the space, then gave Lena a small nod, as if to say they would manage. They led the horses to a lean-to behind the cabin and returned to sit near the fire. Clyde dropped onto the edge of the bed, the rifle laid across his knees. "You said he saved your life?" he asked, jerking his chin toward Nakai. "Yes." Lena replied, steadying her voice. My stagecoach wrecked in a blizzard. I was lost. He and his people rescued me. Clyde snorted. Guess you got lucky. Still don't trust him. They raid farms, kill settlers. Nakai understood enough English to catch the insult. His jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Lena bristled, reminding herself this was the frontier. Fear and prejudice ran deep. She chose silence, focusing instead on getting through the night alive. As the hours dragged on, Clyde's tongue loosened with every swallow of whiskey. He ranted about bad luck, a failed claim during the Black Hills gold rush, a brother killed by bandits near Deadwood, the thin living he'd scraped together at the trading post. Just trying to hang on to something, he muttered. Lena listened, polite but wary, casting uneasy glances at Nakai, who sat quietly, eyes fixed on the flames. Late into the night, Clyde suddenly leaned forward, squinting at her in the lantern light. You said your name was Marrow, he said slowly. She nodded. Lena Marrow. A crooked grin spread across his unshaven face. Well, I'll be damned. Heard that name in Bismarck not long ago. Marrow, Marrow. He snapped his fingers. That's it. Met a man in a saloon, Ridge Halston. Said he was expecting a woman from Philadelphia. Hope jolted through Lena. You saw him? Couple weeks back, Clyde said. He was telling folks his mail-order bride got delayed. Heard rumors she'd frozen to death in a blizzard. Put him in a foul mood. Color drained from Lena's face. He thinks I'm dead. That's what people were saying, Clyde went on. No one knew for sure. He was worried, but angry too. Like he couldn't tell if you died or just disappeared. He shrugged. Hard to say. I didn't stay long enough to ask. Bismarck saloons aren't kind places. Lena swallowed hard, a knot of relief, fear, and guilt tightening in her throat as the fire crackled low beside her. Nakai watched her closely, concern written across his face. Lena managed a faint smile, as if to say she was fine, but inside her heart pounded hard. Do you know if he's still there? She asked, desperation slipping into her voice. In Bismarck? Clyde shrugged. Could be, or he might have gone back to his ranch. Think he said it was about a day's ride out, near a place called Apple Creek. Tears stung Lena's eyes. After weeks of uncertainty, she finally had something solid. Ridge Halston was alive. He had been looking for her, perhaps believing she'd frozen to death. She thanked Clyde, who waved her off with a muttered remark about luck. Before long, he crawled into bed, leaving Lena and Nakai by the dying fire. With the man snoring and the tension thick in the cramped cabin, true rest felt impossible. Leaning against the wall, Nakai spoke softly. You found your man. Soon, you see him. Lena nodded, but guilt twisted deep in her chest. She owed her life to Nakai and the Red Mesa Apache, and now she stood on the threshold of a future promised to another man. If Ridge truly welcomed her after all that had happened, how could she ever explain the bond she now carried with the Apache warrior who had saved her? The question circled relentlessly, stealing what little sleep the night might have offered. Dawn arrived pale and thin through ragged clouds. Lena and Nakai packed quickly, eager to leave Clyde Rourke and the bitterness that clung to him behind. Clyde had softened a fraction by morning, even offering them coffee brewed in a dented tin pot. Still, the tension lingered. Good luck, he muttered from the doorway, rifle close at hand. And watch yourself in Bismarck. It ain't kind to the naive. Lena thanked him with a polite smile. They mounted their horses and headed east once more. By midday, the land began to change. Snow thinned. The ground leveled. In the distance, Lena spotted faint telegraph poles, signs of the railroad and the slow advance of civilization. By late afternoon, the outskirts of Bismarck spread before them. Wooden houses lined muddy streets, stockyards, stables, and rows of busy shops crowded Main Street. A sudden wave of anxiety swept through Lena. This was where she was meant to meet Ridge Halston, but she was no longer the woman who had boarded a train weeks ago. She glanced at Nakai, whose face revealed nothing as he took in the noise and movement of the town. "You will be safe," he said quietly, as if steadying her against the press of people and sound. Lena nodded, unable to speak. They rode slowly into town, drawing stairs. She knew why. A native warrior in winter gear, guiding his horse through a mostly white settlement, set nerves on edge. Tension hummed in the air as passers-by paused to watch. Lena forced herself to look ahead. She had to find Ridge. Outside the modest Bismarck post office, she dismounted. Inside, the elderly clerk startled at the sight of Nakai, then blinked in recognition when he saw her. "Miss Marrow?" he exclaimed, nearly dropping his spectacles. We heard you were lost in that terrible blizzard." "I'm alive," Lena said, offering a tight smile. "Thanks to my friend." "Do you know if Mr. Ridge Halston is still in town?" Lena asked. The clerk pressed his lips together. "Last I heard, Halston was staying at the St. Charles Hotel just down the street, though folks said he was planning to head back to his ranch soon." He hesitated. "People were saying he was pretty shaken, thinking you might not have made it." "Thank you," Lena said quietly. Drawing a steadying breath, she signaled to Nakai, and together they walked toward the small, two-story St. Charles Hotel. At the entrance, she stopped. Turning to Nakai, her voice wavered. I think it's best if I go in alone. The people here, they won't understand." Concern flickered in his eyes, but he nodded. "I wait." She swallowed and stepped inside. Fear and relief crashed together in her chest. Would Ridge be glad to see her, or resentful? There was only one way to know. The lobby smelled of pipe smoke and polished wood, familiar and strange all at once. Lena approached the desk. A short man in a vest looked up, recognition spreading across his face. "Miss Marrow, good heavens, you're alive." She nodded, her voice tight. "Is Mr. Halston here?" He gestured toward a doorway leading to the dining hall. "He's eating. He'll be stunned to see you." Taking a shaky breath, Lena crossed into the dining room. A handful of men sat scattered at tables, bent over bowls of stew or cups of coffee. Then she saw him. Ridge Halston sat alone, dark hair neatly kept, beard trimmed, his coat serviceable but worn. He looked older than she'd imagined. Worry etched deep into his face as he stared into his coffee, hands trembling slightly. "Mr. Halston?" Lena said. He jerked around. For a moment, he looked as though he'd seen a ghost. "Lena." Hearing her name from his lips made her heart lurch. Tears threatened, but she forced them back. "I'm sorry. The storm, I was lost." He shot to his feet so fast his chair nearly tipped, gripping her shoulders as his eyes filled. "I feared the worst. Everyone said no one could survive that blizzard. I waited, hoped, prayed. Good Lord, what happened?" He guided her to a seat. In broken phrases, she told him about the stagecoach wreck, Bram Hensley's disappearance, and her rescue. hesitating when she mentioned Nakai and the Red Mesa Apache. I tried to come as soon as I could. She finished softly. Ridge clasped her hands. None of this is your fault. Thank God you're alive. His voice caught. I'd nearly given up. I even arranged a funeral service, just in case. His grip tightened. But you're here. We can still build our life on the ranch. He went on quickly. I'll write your mother right away. Relief and confusion tangled inside her. She was grateful for his concern, yet a strange distance lingered, like two strangers pressed into an embrace. Thank you for not giving up on me, she said. Ridge's eyes drifted to her worn clothes, the buffalo robe around her shoulders. We'll get you new things, a warm bed. Then we can finally talk about wedding plans. He smiled, though it didn't quite reach his eyes. There's a lot of talk lately about trouble with the tribes. I can't have you riding around with Indians anymore. A sharp flicker of anger rose in her chest. They saved my life, Lena said, her voice steadier than she expected. I owe them everything. Ridge waved it off with a tight gesture. I'm grateful, of course. But these are complicated times, Lena. We have to be careful. She pressed her lips together, remembering the feeling of belonging she had known among the Red Mesa Apache. How they had shared what little they had, without hesitation. The contrast in Ridge's tone was stark. A reminder that she had stepped back into a world shaped by fear, politics, and old prejudices. Still, she nodded. All right. But I need to speak to my friend first. He's outside. I owe him an explanation. Ridge frowned. Your friend? One of those Indians? She bristled at the word. Yes, Nakai. He brought me here. Ridge's shoulders tightened. Fine, but be quick. The less attention, the better. Outside, Nakai stood near the hotel wall, unmoved by the stares of passers-by. Lena walked toward him, bracing herself for the moment she had dreaded. His dark eyes searched her face, reading every strain she tried to hide. She managed a fragile smile. He's here. He's glad I'm alive. Nakai nodded, as though he had expected nothing else. You, he said softly. Stay with him now. Her breath caught. This was the question that had torn at her since the storm. She had traveled all this way for Ridge Halston, yet the road had changed her. What once seemed simple now felt knotted with divided loyalties. I must, she said at last. I promised to marry him. A flicker of pain crossed Nakai's face before he mastered it. She reached out and rested her hand on his forearm. I can never repay what you did. For me, for your people, you gave me warmth, safety, a home. He looked down at her hand. The moment stretched, heavy and taut. Pila Maya, he said quietly. Thank you. Then, carefully, you, strong, good spirit. Tears burned at her eyes. She tightened her grip. This isn't goodbye forever, is it? Maybe we'll meet again, when things settle. He offered a faint smile, sadness still there. Different worlds, he said. Not easy, but maybe. Reaching into his coat, he drew out the small wooden hawk he had carved. He placed it in her palm, closing her fingers around it. Lena pressed her lips together, fighting tears. Nakai, she whispered. Be safe. She wanted to say more, to confess her gratitude, her confusion, the ache of parting. But the words would not come. Nakai inclined his head once, then turned and mounted his horse. The crowd parted as he rode away, a solitary figure heading west toward the wide, open plains. She stood there for a long moment, the small wooden hawk clenched in her hand, feeling as though half her heart had ridden away with him. Ridge Halston wasted no time. He insisted they leave Bismarck for his ranch the very next morning, eager to pull Lena Marrow away from curious eyes, and just as eager to begin what he called their life together. Lena was swept into a blur of preparations, buying sturdy clothes, settling what little business she had at the mercantile, and readying herself to travel once more. This journey followed the Missouri River south, crossing near Apple Creek, toward the place she had once imagined as home. The ranch was modest. 2 small cabins, a barn, a rough paddock for the horses, and a stretch of winter-browned pasture rolling out on either side. Ridge explained that he'd inherited the land from an uncle, along with a heavy share of debt. He admitted, almost offhandedly, that he'd hoped a wife's labor and perhaps a dowry might help steady his fortunes, though Lena had none to offer. It quickly became clear his finances were far more fragile than his letters had suggested. As they settled into the main cabin, tension crept into daily life. Some days Ridge was kind, apologetic about what she'd endured. Other days, impatience edged his voice, especially when bills came due or when newspapers carried stories about clashes involving the local Apache. "Their trouble," he muttered once, scanning an article about a skirmish with the Territory Dragoons. "I don't trust any of them." Lena stiffened, memories of Nakai's quiet kindness flashing through her mind. "Not all are like that," she said carefully. "Many just want to live in peace on their land." Ridge sighed, as though indulging a child. "You were lucky, Lena. But you can't judge an entire people by one man. They've attacked settlements, stolen stock. We've got enough problems without you dwelling on them." His tone bristled with frustration, and she felt it settle between them like a wall. More and more, Lena realized the man she had known through letters was not fully the man standing before her. Desperation, financial and emotional, had narrowed his world until there was room for little else. Winter loosened its hold slowly. When spring finally came, it brought mud, endless work, and mounting strain. Lena labored beside Ridge, mending fences, tending their small herd, stretching meals from dwindling supplies. She tried to be the partner she had promised to be, yet unease gnawed at her. That feeling sharpened the day a stranger rode up to the ranch. The man was tall, his manner cold, his eyes sharp and calculating. He dismounted, tipping his hat briefly to Lena before turning to Ridge. "You get my payment, Halston?" Ridge stiffened, glancing at Lena before answering. "I need more time," Vance Calder. "Winter hit us hard. The herd—" Calder cut him off with a harsh laugh. "Time? I've given you time." His voice hardened. "You promised the debt would be settled by spring. If not, I take the ranch." A chill ran through Lena. Debt. Take the ranch. Ridge had never told her how close to ruin they were. This was more than tight money. He was on the brink of losing everything. Calder's gaze slid back to her, appraising. "I see you found yourself a bride," he said. "Congratulations." "A real shame," Vance Calder said coldly, "to begin married life with no roof over your heads." Ridge Halston's hands shook with fury, but he said nothing, jaw tight as he swallowed the insult. Lena Marrow wanted to speak, to demand answers, but the air felt too heavy to cut through. At last, Calder spat into the dust. "I'll be back in a week," he said. "Have the money or start packing." He swung into the saddle and rode off, leaving a cloud of dirt hanging behind him. Lena turned on Ridge the moment Calder was gone. "You lied to me," she said, her voice sharp. "You never told me we could lose the ranch." Ridge spun toward her, his face drawn tight. "I didn't have a choice. I thought I could fix it before you arrived. Then the storm came. Everything collapsed." His voice broke. "I need you, Lena. I can't do this alone." She stepped back, tears burning. "But you never told me the truth." In that moment, the trap closed around her. She was far from the east, standing on the edge of a marriage to a man drowning in debt. For a heartbeat, she thought of Philadelphia, then dismissed it. Her mother barely survived as it was. A train ticket home was far beyond her reach now. Sorrow washed over her. What have I done? In the days that followed, Ridge grew frantic. He rode from place to place seeking loans. But every neighbor was struggling, lost cattle, crushing interest, trouble tied to the railroad. No one could help. Calder's threat loomed like a storm cloud. One afternoon, Ridge found Lena in the barn, feeding the horses. He looked hollow-eyed, as though sleep had abandoned him. "I found a way," he said quietly. "But you won't like it." She sat down hard on a bale of hay. "Tell me." He hesitated, then forced the words out. "There's a group forming in Bismarck. Men being paid to push the Red Mesa Apache off certain lands. They're offering bounties, proof, information. If I join them, I could clear the debt." Horror surged through her. "You want to hunt the Apache? Have you lost your mind?" "It's not like that," he said quickly. "They say it's scouting, helping make arrests. The Territory Dragoons are tightening control after the new treaty. I'd just be selling information." She shook her head fiercely. "They saved me. Nakai saved me. I won't let you betray them." Ridge grabbed her arms. "You think I want this? I don't have a choice. If I don't raise the money by next week, we lose everything. Calder will throw us off this land. We'll be ruined. Is that what you want?" Fear and a fury tore through her. She wrenched free. "You can't do this." His voice cracked. "I have to. You have to understand." Then he stormed out, leaving her shaking, anger and dread twisting together. The walls of the cabin seemed to close in around her. Is this truly the man I came west to marry? That night, Lena sat alone at the table, a single candle flickering weakly. Her thoughts drifted to the Apache camp, to Nakai's quiet smile, to Saya's healing tease, to the fragile balance of their lives under constant threat. The idea of Ridge conspiring with men determined to drive them away made her stomach turn. She closed her fingers around the small wooden hawk, its smooth edges biting into her palm as a silent promise formed in her heart. If only I could warn them. Ridge Halston snored in the next room, worn down by guilt and strain. Lena Morrow rose, her heart pounding. She slipped into her cloak and boots, easing the cabin door open. Moonlight glazed the frozen ground. Moving quietly, she crossed to the barn and saddled a horse, hands shaking at the risk she was taking. She had to find Nakai. She had to warn him and his people. Leaving the ranch behind in the dead of night, she rode north, guided by thin starlight and memory. She didn't know if she could even find the Red Mesa Apache camp, only that she had to try. By first light, she reached the hills where they had wintered before. The site lay empty, just as she feared. She pushed on, searching for tracks or signs of where they had gone. Exhaustion clawed at her, memories of nearly freezing in this land pressing close. But desperation drove her forward. Hours passed. At last, she spotted a faint thread of smoke near a stand of pines. She dismounted and led her horse on foot. A sharp whistle cut the air. 2 Apache riders appeared, bows drawn. Lena raised her hands. One of the men squinted, then called out. The bows lowered. They hurried her toward the camp. Relief washed over her as a familiar figure stepped from a tepee. Nakai. He rushed to her side, gripping her arm. Lena, what? Breathless, she tried to answer, then crumpled to her knees. He lifted her and guided her to the fire. When she could speak, the words spilled out. How Ridge planned to join men determined to drive the Apache from their lands, how raids or arrests might come at any moment. She begged them to move, to prepare. The elders listened in grim silence. Talon's face hardened, anger simmering beneath his calm. Voices rose in rapid Apache, some refusing to be pushed any farther, others urging retreat to avoid bloodshed. At last, they chose to move west, deeper into territory they hoped would lie beyond the army's immediate reach. Only then did Lena grasp the cost. By warning them, she had burned her last bridge with Ridge, turned her back on the life she once sought. Sorrow weighed on her, yet beneath it lay a quiet certainty. She had done what her conscience demanded. Ridge, however, was no fool. When he woke to find Lena gone and a horse missing, he knew where she had ridden. Furious and feeling betrayed, he rode hard for Bismarck to strike a bargain with Vance Calder and his hired men. Together, they set out to track the Apache. Calder quickly realized that Ridge's knowledge of Lena and her bond with the tribe would lead them straight to the hidden camp. As the Apache finished packing to leave, watchers raised the alarm. A large group of armed men was approaching. Panic rippled through the camp. Lena's heart hammered as she saw a cloud of dust rising on the horizon. Nakai rallied the warriors to form a defense while women and children prepared to flee. Moments later, Calder and Calder's men crested a rise above the camp, spreading out in a hard line. Ridge rode among them. Ridge's face twisted with rage and desperation when he saw her standing beside Nakai. "You betrayed me," he shouted, his voice cracking. "I had no choice but to come with Vance Calder. Hand over the tribe's leaders, and this ends without bloodshed." Lena stepped forward, shaking with fury. "You swore you only wanted information. Now you ride in armed, ready to tear these people from their homes." Ridge spat into the dust. "I told you, I can't lose my ranch. Calder promised enough to clear my debt if I helped." Calder lifted his rifle, a thin sneer on his lips. "Stand aside, girl. This is official business." The standoff snapped tight. Warriors of the Red Mesa Apache raised bows and rifles. Calder's men leveled their guns in reply. The air felt stretched to breaking, like a bowstring pulled too far. Nakai shifted in front of Lena, one arm protective, steady. She heard men breathing, ragged, ready. Her thoughts raced. If this turned violent, families would die on both sides. Time slowed. Lena saw Calder flick his arm, urging his men forward. She saw Apache warriors murmur a last prayer and take aim. And she saw Ridge caught in the middle, trapped between fear of ruin and the horror of unleashing gunfire on innocent people. She stepped out, hands raised. "Stop, please, stop." No one moved, but eyes turned to her. Heart hammering, she faced Calder. "If it's money you want, I can help you get it, but not like this." Calder barked a laugh. "You? Help me get money. You're a mail-order bride with no dowry. Lena set her jaw. There's a trading post near Apple Creek, Harris Trading. The man there, Clyde Rourke, bragged about a stash of gold from Deadwood. She paused, forcing the lie. He said he hid ore to sell once spring came. Greed flickered in Calder's eyes. You're bluffing. I was there, she said, holding his gaze with all the conviction she could muster. I saw it. Several sacks of ore under the floorboards. You want to waste bullets here, or do you want real gold? Calder hesitated, greed wrestling his thirst for blood. Ridge shouted, She's lying, Calder. Lena shook her head hard, never breaking eye contact. Go see for yourself. If I'm lying, you can come back and find me. Behind Calder, his men shifted uneasily. They hadn't signed on for a massacre. They wanted payment. Calder weighed it. Gamble on rumored gold or spark a war against determined warriors. At last, he cursed under his breath. We'll check the trading post. He glared at Lena. If you've played me false, I'll burn your ranch and kill every last one of these savages. He wheeled his horse, signaling his men to follow. Lena's breath rushed out as the riders turned away. Ridge lingered, staring at her with disbelief and betrayal. You, he said hoarsely, you'd lie to them. She met his eyes and did not look away. Better a lie than bloodshed, Lena said quietly. Ridge's face contorted. And what about my ranch? The debt? She lifted her chin. I don't know. But I won't stand by while innocent people die so you can hold on to land built on fear. Pain and anger warred in his eyes. Then, without another word, he kicked his horse forward and rode after Vance Calder and his men, disappearing into the drifting dust. A wave of relieved cries swept through the Red Mesa Apache camp. But the tension did not fade. Everyone knew Calder might return once the deception was uncovered, or that the Territory Dragoons could arrive at any moment. Talon gave swift orders. The camp would move west immediately. Lena turned toward Nakai, her breath still unsteady from the confrontation. She expected anger for bringing danger to his people. Instead, he nodded once. You saved us. She pressed a trembling hand to her chest. I only wish I could have done more. But you have to leave. They'll come back when they realize the gold isn't real. He rested a hand on her shoulder, gentle but sure. Come with us. She froze. Every moment since the blizzard rushed through her, the warmth of the fires, the quiet acceptance, the way she had been welcomed without question. Then she thought of Ridge Halston, of the line he had crossed, and the life she had almost bound herself to. A life shaped by desperation and fear. Something inside her loosened. She had no home waiting for her now. No future in that ranch life. That bridge was gone. Her place was here, among the people who had saved her life. Twice. And when she looked at Nakai, she felt something deeper than gratitude. Something steady and undeniable. Tears gathered as she nodded. Yes, if your people will accept me, I want to stay. Relief softened his shoulders, and a genuine smile touched his lips. Come. With that single word, Lena Marrow turned away from the illusion of the life she once believed was meant for her. She chose a harder road, one rarely walked by outsiders. She would travel with the Red Mesa Apache, share their trials, learn their ways, and stand with them against an uncertain future beyond the western horizon. The path she had set out on, as a mail-order bride in a harsh frontier, had led her somewhere else entirely. Here, she found her true home. And in choosing to protect Nakai's people, She saved them from ruin and herself from a life built on lies and debt. Finally, let me send my deep thanks to you. Thank you for giving your time to this story. Some journeys shape us, and we hope this one left a mark on your heart. There are more paths ahead, more legends of love, hardship, and redemption beneath the western sky. Please subscribe, leave your thoughts, and travel with us once again. Thank you, and God bless. Aviso legal. Disclaimer. The stories presented here are creative expressions and may mix historical inspiration with dramatized scenes. AI tools contribute to some elements of voice, imagery, and structure. But every published story is refined by editors and creators to ensure authentic emotional impact. We honor YouTube's policies and do not generate deceptive likenesses or artificial depictions of real people. All audiovisual components are legally licensed. Any use, redistribution, or alteration of this content must be granted through written consent. Your presence here means a lot. Thank you for supporting artistic storytelling.